All right, can everyone hear me? I think people can hear me anyway. We're gonna get started because we have 4 presenters today. My name is Courtney Schilling. I'll be chairing this session. I'm a student at the University of Aveiro, so I'm really excited to be here amongst these amazing presenters, learning a lot about creative tourism and cultural tourism. So first we'll get started with Daniela Jelencic, who's from the Institute for Development and International Relations in Croatia. She's a researcher and professor. She'll be presenting for us about creative and emotional engagement and well-being in cultural tourism experiences. Each presenter will have 15 minutes, and then we'll give them time for questions right after each session. All right, we'll leave it to you, Daniela.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for this introduction. So I have 15 minutes, and I will try to stick to it. So if we just can have the picture on the slide. Great. Okay, I'm coming from the Institute for Development and International Relations from the Culture and Communication Department, and as Courtney presented, I'm focused on cultural tourism, but there is also some creativity within the presentation, which you will see. So I'm presenting a paper that a colleague of mine from the Faculty of the Economy from the University of Zagreb, Inge Brmaticic and myself published recently in the journal Sustainability. which focused on the well-being. So we spoke a lot about well-being within this conference, within the tea session, within the first session with Diane Dredge. So well-being is now a top topic, and there is no doubt that culture can contribute to well-being. But what we focused on was museums. What is their role in stimulating well-being? So it's been researched also from different tourism aspects, like within social tourism, wellness tourism, rural tourism, backpacker, etc., etc. But surprisingly, there is a void of research focus on well-being in cultural tourism, whereas everybody would suppose that culture is something very well connected with well-being, and this was our starting point. There are also different facets of well-being, so we had to enter psychological research on that. The so-called subjective well-being, objective well-being, and the so-called social well-being, which I will explain a little bit later on, and they are not addressed equally in the existing research. So, we studied on the case study of the Museum of Broken Relationships. I don't know if you guys have been to Zagreb. Anyone been to Zagreb? No? Yes? Okay. Have you? So you saw the museum? Great. Okay, maybe you can share afterwards. So this is a specific topic, broken relationships, right? So maybe there is a logical connection to well-being, or maybe not, depending on the perspective which you have. It's the story about, well, the real story is it was a couple who broke up, and they wanted to not to end this relationship with a total breakup in that terms, but they first organized a touring exhibition on the topic of the broken relationships, and then with the passing of years, they established a museum. It's not officially a museum. Well, Darko will probably explain. It's just called a museum, but they now apply to be a real museum, what the definition entails, actually. So the main assumption of the research was that the Museum of Broken Relationship experiences have a relevant influence on objective local well-being, tourist subjective, as well as social well-being. Normally creative and experiential tourism offer participation. They offer direct engagement. So once when you are engaged, a tourist is engaged, there is a high possibility that it stirs emotions. So there is emotional engagement if you do something, if you work, and it may positively affect even human health. We do not so far have research on this part that we have really health-related effects, output, but at least well-being is quite well researched. So the key pillars of these two concepts are participation and emotional satisfaction. So if this is offered by museums, then we can expect that it will have the effect of well-being on the visitors or tourists. So the study, just the concept of the study, the subjective well-being was measured using the so-called short Warwick-Edinburgh mental well-being scale, so it can be measured really, so that you can see the effects. It's been, a little bit just about the methodology. It used a questionnaire and 11-point Likert scale metrics. You are, as researchers, acquainted with it. While objective well-being, I will explain a little bit later, is measured using available statistical data. Objective would focus on some economic benefits, such as more money, to put it like that, and also education, health, etc. So, in short, the research results showed moderate to high subjective well-being and a rather high sense of trust and belonging, revealing social well-being. So this is what is actually measured. Along the same line, statistical data showed a substantial contribution of the Museum of Broken Relationship to the objective well-being, therefore making money, using the museum in education, etc., etc. So now with the study. So we all know that today our lifestyles are characterized by high stress environment. Is it work related or family life? We're all stressed. There is a rising body of studies focusing on different well-being programs, and there is the increase in the number of studies dealing with the relationship between well-being and specific types of tourism, but not cultural tourism, as I already mentioned. So through tourism programs, a person can achieve self-actualization. This is one of the indicators how well-being is measured. And tourism niches, particularly corresponding to this trend, are creative and experiential tourism. Why? Because they offer participation, engagement. Sorry, it was supposed to be 2, right? And not 3. So this I explained. As I mentioned, well-being relates both to subjective and objective well-being. So subjective well-being, by definition, is primarily about emotions, judgments, and experiences. This is about how people feel, what they feel, how they function, and evaluate their life, along with feelings of happiness, satisfaction, autonomy, and purpose in life. So try to imagine, can museums be the actor in making their visitors rethinking their purpose of life? While objective well-being, as I said, has these components, is measured by the components such as income, education, health, environmental quality, life expectancies. This is how usually cities are measured. You know, there are the scales of the cities, like, I don't know, Vancouver, for example, usually ends up at the top, right? Yeah, because there is high income, high education, very good facilities in terms of environment, etc., etc. But we can also measure that on the level of museums or any other type. Subjective well-being, arts and culture. What's subjective well-being in arts and culture? So they inherently deal with emotions. So if we measure satisfaction, how people feel, we know that music can influence well-being, right? People feel well. It really touches your emotions. As I said, there is a knowledge gap on this topic. And when we speak about tourism, tourism is often associated with the relaxation time. So it's logically connected to some kind of satisfaction. So most of the studies in tourism focus only on satisfaction and not other emotions, but still. So a mere activity of sightseeing, which is the most usual activity in cultural tourism, may evoke pleasure, but it's not highly likely that it will engage people and stir their emotions. So usually the sightseeing activities are presenting us with a lot of facts, like this church was built in this year by this architect, etc. So only half an hour after this type of activity, people remember 10% of the information that was presented, right? So what we want them to do and feel is to engage them in direct participation activities, which increases the possibility of emotional engagement. Well, while engagement, focus, challenges, and meaning, someone spoke about it, right, Diane, I suppose, they are inherent to artistic and cultural activities. Okay, I explained that pretty much. We speak a lot about tourism experience design today. So we can actually design experiences to make our tourists and visitors feel something. So experiences are also inherent to various touristscapes. But as I said, existing studies about touristscapes cover cruise tourism, music festival, museum experiences, etc. The fathers of the experience design, which were then also used in tourism, are Pine and Gilmore. Probably you heard about them, right? They ended up with offering us principles which are applied in tourist experience design. And they are really handy in terms of practical projects, right? We also have a concept which is called psychological well-being that offers psychological satisfaction. We also talked about technology today. They can also be done by way of different technologies, but not only. And Pine and Gilmore speak about different experience realms. So there are different levels of engagement. All offer experiences, but different levels of engagement. So these concepts are actually the key to creating experiences. And we talked about it today, so I won't spend time. Co-creation, participation, engagement, theming. It has to be organized around one theme. If there are too many themes, the brain needs structure. If there is no structure. So this is why the Museum of Broken Relationships is successful, because it's all around one theme, but from different perspectives, right? Different people. So how did we conceptualize the experience? The study. So we used these experience design principles like individuality, active participation, theming, etc., and connected them to these well-being dimensions. So we ended up with connecting, for example, immersion. Immersion is one of the design principles, okay, which is connected to clear thinking. So the tourists which we studied were supposed to express something like this if immersion was applied. So the aim was actually to generate a new body of knowledge on subjective well-being, and we contributed with the effects which specifically designed cultural tourism products have on visitors' subjective well-being. So as I said, we used this museum. I explained what it is. So these assumptions were that specific experience design principles, which they used, may end up with well-being, and such engagement contributes to the overall meaning and experience. The question was, or the hypothesis was pretty much assumption and not the hypothesis, are cultural tourists inherently prone to well-being effects in comparison with non-cultural tourists? That was the assumption. They weren't, you will see. So, not to read, to save time, you can, not to speak, yeah. So we used the quantitative research design and the measurement I mentioned, the measurement scale. And there were 5 questions to be answered on the 5-point Likert scale. So the tested variables were well-functioning aspects, so sense of competence in life, positive feelings like happiness, relaxation, optimism, and evaluation of the whole life. It's interesting because normally when we bring tourists to see this, they don't feel very well after the visit. They're pretty sad, I would say. So we were asking ourselves, is it really good to bring tourists? But then it actually means that it stirred emotions. So it's not only about satisfaction, it's not only about happiness. So obviously the good design principles were applied, so it stirred emotions. So not to explain everything, but a total of 500 and something questionnaires were collected, and the museum normally attracts like 80% of the visitors are tourists. So we focused on tourists. After the respondents' profile, which is a general one, we collected this number of total responses. As you can see, most of them ended up feeling moderate well-being. So it wasn't so high, but still it was really, really handy. I would just give an example from the museum exhibition. You know how you usually have the visitor book at the end of the museum where you write satisfied or not satisfied. What they did, actually, they put the visitor book at the center of the exhibition and called this confession room. So it was the participatory approach, and the visitors were supposed to write their feelings or whatever they wanted. And within our research, which was previous to this one, we ended up finding 5 cases of family rape. So people really wanted to express what the broken relationship meant to them. So this is how we actually designed this study, because we ended up seeing that the museum helps people to unburden themselves of difficult situations, and then sharing it with others, not verbally, but at least by writing, could help people, the others, having similar experiences, right? So this is the scientific work, not to bother you, but you can see that all the items were above the 3.5 score. Okay, I'm finishing, so it means that it's a rather moderate well-being. And these red ones are with the highest score. I feel good and useful, and I'm able to think clearly about past experiences in life. So it really meant them a lot. So this actually gives them an opportunity to reflect upon their own experiences with more clarity. Concerning higher well-being for cultural tourists, the result was that it really wasn't. So all the tourists feel well-being. So the topic is so common to all of us that we all can identify with it. And I'm ending in terms of objective well-being. It wasn't properly studied, but we know that this museum often ends up at the top 3 places of the TripAdvisor practically every year, and it's a small museum, but it significantly contributes to the location where it's to the local community, but then again also to the city of Zagreb itself. So with the number of tourists, definitely we have the increased income. They offer a number of educational tours, so they contribute to this indicator. I mentioned the visitor book, so also in terms of health, but this is, as I said, not properly measured and should be done in future studies. So what design principles are the key? Individual approach to each tourist, active participation, clear theme, authentic and extraordinary elements which they use in the exhibition, tourist immersion, focus. This is why we have to have the individual approach. So a topic which is so individual is perfect for creating something like this. Yeah, so much about it because I don't have any more time, and if there are any questions, we can continue that in the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniela.
Sure.
Does anyone have a burning question now? due to time, I might move on to the next presenter, and if you have a question, we can wait till the end. Okay? All right, so we can bring up our second presenter. You can get ready while I'm presenting. We have Regina Bezerra, who will be presenting on the potential of olive oil for cultural-based experiences in the north of Portugal. She comes to us from the Instituto Politécnico de Viana do Castelo in Portugal, and we're excited to hear about the cultural heritage of olive oil.
Oh, thank you.
15 minutes.
I am also an olive oil lover. Okay, let me just... Good. Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for sitting with us so we can share some recent data that we have been working on. This presentation has the contribution of Olga Matos and Alexandra Correia that are also here present today. I am Regina, as I was already presented, and our study is based on olive oil. It is known as the golden liquid for some. The study started before the pandemics already. It started with content analysis, and afterwards, we had the pandemics, of course, and then afterwards we moved on to interviews. Just get here. Okay, so today what we would like to share is to understand the perceptions of producers and suppliers about the potential of olive oil for cultural-based experiences. So as I mentioned before, the study started before pandemics. We did some content analysis on websites and social medias, and then it's still going on, the interviews, but till the present date we had some structured interviews with producers and suppliers to give us an insight about this theme. I would like to highlight that we were very happy because we were so well received by the community, and afterwards you will see the region that I'm talking about. They were so happy to be part of this research that it motivated us to do even more work with them, and we are really happy to be working with them also. So some key ideas from the beginning, and I'm only going to highlight Morgado because Morgado has, Morgado has interesting works about oleoturismo because his main research area is Spain, especially Jaén, and he writes about the opportunities for activities and also unique culture-based experiences. His work is really very interesting. So we cannot talk about olive oil without talking about the olive tree. It is strong and timeless, as you know. It's been in the Greek mythology, in the Bible, in the Quran. It is the oldest cultivated tree, even before language was invented. Its origins from the Asia Minor, as you can see there. And also, it comes it came to the Mediterranean 6,000 years ago. It's used in religion. It is known as the symbol of peace, also. Used in ceremonies, the Greeks, for example, anointed the athletes with oil. So olive oil has been in history and really has strong roots. In Portugal, it was planted in the right banks of Tagus River, the Lisbon area, but why it's really spread from north to south. Portugal has really deep roots with olive groves and olive oil. So giving you a little bit international context about olive oil. Spain is the world's biggest producer, followed by Greece, Italy, and Portugal. Okay? Spain has a long tradition with olive oil. Just for you to know, they have 32 protected designation of origin of the PDOs, DOPs, as we say in Portuguese, has 32. They have, and as you see, 70 to 75 come from those regions, Jaén, Córdoba, Sevilla, and oleoturismo is really rooted in these areas. They have countless experiences. If you go to the area, I don't know if anybody, I bet somebody has already been to one of those regions, and you can find anywhere activities with olive oil. As you can see, we have Greece that also has the cultural root that belongs to the cultural roots of Europe. That I think it was 2005 where this route when it began, And we also have down there Australia, South Africa, and USA that have experiences with olive oil, but always associated with the wine roots. So a little bit about our national context here in Portugal. As you can see, we have here the map for our DOPs, PDOs, okay? We have 7. The olive oil, Portuguese olive oil, is well known. We have won awards in the main contests of olive oil. Portugal skyrockets olive oil industry, say olive all times. And we are the 7th oil producer and also the 4th exporter. And we export, our biggest client is Brazil. So a little bit about introducing you to the north region of Portugal. We are the greenest also of the regions of Portugal. It's a little bit like Azores, all green and blue. It's also, this region has a symbiosis between the old and the past, the new and the old. We have modern cities like Porto, Braga, Guimarães also, where you have these modern cities, but in a rural setting. It's still very present, the rural life in these northern parts of Portugal. Full of traditions, gastronomy, handicraft. It's perfect for the creation, and we have some routes like the Vinhos Verdes route, port wine route. Everybody here knows what port wine route is. And we also have the olive oil route in Trás dos Montes, and we will talk a little bit about that further on. So the olive oil in the northern region of Portugal the north is the 2nd biggest producer, because we have Alentejo that is the biggest producer of olive oil in Portugal, as we all know. And passing on now to the region of Trás os Montes. Translating it, it is beyond the mountains, Trás os Montes, the mountains of Marão and Alvão. It is a rural region known by its landscape, full of heritage, also tradition, crafts, and gastronomy and wine. In Portugal, this whole region is gastronomy and wine. So, as I talked to you before, the content analysis started before the pandemic, and we identified olive tasting associated with regional products, such as wine and cheese and bread, olive mills, visits to olive mills, visits to olive groves, and storytelling. And always the visit to the museum. The museum also does tasting and storytelling. There's a museum, the Olive Oil Museum in Trás dos Montes. So a little bit now about the study and the data we have been gathering. The first question we did to our interviewers is if they promoted and do training activities related with olive oil. Of course, the majority said yes. And of course, by saying yes, we wanted to know more. And we asked them, what did they do? The majority answered olive oil tasting, and a big percentage said other experiences. They really put down other experiences. Now, we will have to work more to discover these experiences, but I don't know what they really are doing different from what we have been finding till now. So, when they are asked about the demand before and after COVID, we had 4 key answers were given. Reduced demand, that it's starting to flourish now, that they were part of the olive route, but it was not significant because it didn't bring anything new to them. There was an answer that he said, I don't even know, I belong to it, but I don't even know what I'm doing. So they also mentioned the promotion of olive oil as a brand. If it was a brand, they could raise awareness. After COVID, we asked if they needed to create new activities or experiences. The majority said no, but for those who said yes, they gave us 5 most reference: olive oil tasting, tours, visits, thematic dinners, and olive picking with tourists. But they also referred to an important communication, for the importance of communication in this area. They needed to promote the existing activities that they already had. So they said that they needed to promote more internationally, to participate more in international and national fairs also, to present olive oils to hotels, because hotels bought tourists and it was there that they could present their olive oils, to create and promote online video calls during the harvest. I am really interested in finding out what they mean by this, because how they are going how they are doing this, and to raise awareness of the potential of the region for thematic and cultural tourism. So to discover the relation of olive oil to the preservation of heritage, the region, they gave us also 5 answers, but we would like to highlight the relation, preserve region's culture and identity, the memory of past generations and tradition. Olive oil is heritage itself for this region. So we wanted to find out more if olive oil can make a difference or be a leveler for tourism in this region. And they said yes, without a doubt, saying that it complements the region, also attracts visitors. But however, they also say that there is the need for example, for the recognition of the value. For example, to recover ancient olive groves, because the region has olive trees 100, 150 years old. Also, they need a collective vision for this, more collaboration, thematic fairs, and knowledge of the different types of olive oil. So we asked them if they believed if the region had potential for experiences with olive oil, and which ones. They said yes, to create and also to reinforce the ones that are already happening. Visit to olive groves and mills, gastronomic experience, for example, tasting, storytelling, also for more activities with the olive oil museum that exists there. And there was even the idea of creating, there is the existing route of the olive oil, but this was an idea of creating a route for ancient olive groves, because olive trees were planted around the vineyards to protect the vineyards. So there is many olive trees to be identified, ancient olive trees to be identified, and they believe that it could be potential to do a new route of ancient olive trees. So as to barriers, because not everything is sweet, of course, there's always barriers to pass. They said that there had to be recognition due to the lack of the protected origin of the olive oil from Trás-os-Montes. They need to protect the origin of this olive oil. There is also lack of training, lack of knowledge to know how to sell the olive oil and how to change mentalities, beliefs, and lacks of information, for example. Finally, we asked the vision about when comparing national or international, what is happening outside also. They said that comparing to the other international, to also, for example, Alentejo, they said that the potential is huge. But there's a lot to do. They need to boost the conditions for olive oil tourism also, and excellent level for human, economic, and cultural development of this region. So, for my final remarks, we have obtained that olive oil is an excellent element of identity of the region itself. The existence of the quality olive oil and the brand image of Trás-os-Montes. Trás-os-Montes needs to brand this image of their olive oil. Comparing the activities before and after, they are similar, what is happening, except for those experiences that they said they're doing, but we do not know still which ones they are doing. The potential to create and produce experiences, synergies with other products, for example, as we talked with the maize bread. The potential passes, attractiveness, differentiations. The form of harvesting is different in Alentejo. It's still very traditional, not mechanical. And the potential is reinforced by the flourishing demand. And of course, the existing barriers that influence the development of activities, experiences like mindset, knowledge, and collaboration. And what can we do to surpass this? Training, cooperation, information, and promotion. So believing that experiences are better than things, we will continue to work on this study. I hope you have enjoyed this experience, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Regina. Wonderful presentation. Does anyone have a question now for Regina?
Or later.
Or later? Okay. Don't forget to write your questions down so you don't forget. Okay, now I'll introduce our next presenter, is Olga Matos. She also comes to us from the Instituto Politécnico de Viana do Castelo. She'll also be presenting about the same region. And Lab 2PT, correct? Yes, thank you. And she, along with her team, will be presenting the contribution of festivals to creative tourism and territorial development. Are small-scale festivals a useful contribution? You'll have 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Yep.
It's okay. It's okay. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Olga, and I'm trying to present. I will speak about festivals. Also, is an interesting subject, and I will speak about donkeys also. So, our question is: are small-scale festival a useful contribution? I'll make some overview about festivals in Europe, particularly in South Europe, and I will bring two case studies about two regions. And effectively, these two case states are, in fact, examples from ancient examples of our pilots of Creator, that because we are one of the partners of Creator project in Portugal, and I will show you some examples about these festivals and the contribution that we think we can achieve with this. So, very briefly, my presentation, some introduction, some conceptualization, aim and methodology, results and discussion, and some final remarks. So, festivals, events, there is something very common. We know in the last decades we have increasingly gained in number, size, and all the types of experience we know about events, but interrupted in 2020 by pandemic and COVID. So, festivals play an important role for economic development of regions by the promotion and engagement with these local communities, and bringing also a mixture of promotional things with products, with handicraft, food, local traditions. There is something, a good level for promoting small regions. So, there are, in fact, three main reasons for this popularity of festivals and for a kind of promotion tool for tourism. The first one, because they increase the demand for local tourism. Of course, the second one, because they can help to recreate the image, a place, and also contribute to exposure of a location that are trying hardly to get on the map, of course. And finally, the strategic placement of the festival in the local tourism calendar that can help fight this big problem of tourism that is seasonality, as you know. So, we know also that there are small and medium-sized cities and rural areas. You know, very interesting look to this small festival, not the big festivals, but they, in fact, enhance the national and the international image of the host community, and this is also good for them, and reshaping a place image from the place rarely visited and with low inbound tourist flows into an attractive, we think, and tourist place. So, events, mega events, small festivals, big festivals, so really a festival could be a small community festivals and show a kind of range of variety of thematics, including gastronomy, wines, arts, music, sport, religion, history, culture. There are a kind of menu of festivals, and this diversity of size and thematics makes it difficult to produce a definition in a way for a kind of event concept that covers the entire range of the thematic, and the word event is commonly used to refer to a wide variety of celebrations. So this is event, it's much more easier, event. So, but we are looking particularly to creative, are in fact small-scale festivals speaking about creativity. So, as there is still no a consistent definition for what we call a festival within creative tourism, but we'll consider that it must offer a program linked to, first, local culture, heritage, involve elements of the place, and allow a rapprochement between the local community and tourists. So, a creative tourism festival should also provide moments of exchange and co-creation. And so examples with lots of different kind of workshops that can allow this transmission of the aspects of local culture to the tourists. So, moving on, the aim of the presentation, very simple, to identify the impacts of small-scale festivals on the development of medium-sized cities or rural areas. We are bringing two examples, particularly. We made our first research with a survey, a questionnaire with 174 answers, respondents, and we made also a kind of overview about festivals. A database was created with 164 festivals in South Europe, registered on this Festival Finder EU, that is belong to European Festival Association platform, and this was between April 2019 and May 2020. So, let's look at some information more. Even that we are making with our two case studies, with some interviews, and we try to find out some characteristics of these visitors at our small festivals. Things like the profile, age, level, education, accommodation, shopping, if they spend money, not income, etc. Some ideas to know more or less who are these clients, who are this participation. So, some results. Starting with a general overview. You can see that we have here lots of countries that make lots of festivals, and we have particularly in this representation, I must look to the numbers. I'm not sure if I know all the numbers. Yes, if you look at the example of Italy leading with 33 festivals, after Portugal with 31, and after we have Greece, Spain, Croatia, Montenegro, Serbia, Malta, Slovenia, Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Gibraltar, and North Macedonia. So, and you can check to this. We have, after look, not a complete study, but we have a look to this platform, and the pandemic limitations bring to us the number of 6 festivals during 2021. So you can see the consequences of the pandemic. So, looking to another way to show this, we have a kind of density map, and you can see more impressive data and number here nearby Iberica Peninsula with Portugal, Spain, but also in this region with Italy, Greece, as you can see, the more density of higher examples of festivals. So, going on to the number of attendees, you look to, there are different kinds of festivals with a number of persons. I can say to you that, for instance, 62% of all these festivals are up 2,000 attendees per day, and only 8% have under 500 attendees per day. So we are looking at big festivals, particularly in Portugal, festivals about music, about stars of the music, but in fact we can see that we have particularly 3 countries, Portugal, Italy and Greece, with a several number of festivals with a big dimension. So looking to this distribution in different way, we can see the concentration in area, this area, and all this area in nearby Italy, Greece, and we have also countries as Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, etc. And particularly we have no results, or that was in fact not in the platform, some data for France, for the south of France. So if you look to another thing, the support for disabled people, the answer yes, the green is yes, okay, there is a significant number, but if you look to the no, is also significant, and most significant is the data that we don't know. They don't give us some answer, but more or less we have a particular example of some concerns about disabled people during these experiences. So, and move on to Portugal and to our reality. In fact, Portugal, we can say that Portugal, we have dominating large events with a lot of attendees, particularly at Lisbon and Porto, because there are lots of events about music, as I said to you, and also is something about inside our tourism strategic plan for develop Portugal. This is one of the ideas for that. And Portugal, for example, is the only country that we check that have these kind of festivals only in rural areas, effectively. And in this case, mostly these festivals are related, of course, to local and endogenous resources. And you'll see our 2 study case present this one part, the Encontro Armares, that is a festival nearby Braga, and this one is very, very, very interesting, is the Festival of the Donkey. This festival was named in The Guardian in the 20 most interesting festivals in Europe. And I'm going to show you some data about this. For instance, Encontro Armares is a small city in the transition between small city and rural area with 20,000 inhabitants, and is very linked to art and contemporary art. Burro Gaiteiro Donkey Festival is a small place in the north of Portugal, Miranda do Douro, and is a place very rural with 7,050 inhabitants only, very depopulation area with a lot of Asian people, with a good dynamic of associations. So I'm going direct to some ideas. What we can do at this festival? For this one, they have traditional things like workshops about bagpipes, workshops about traditional instruments for percussion, what they call a freita tamboleiro. They have mixed dances. They have workshops about the dialect in northern Portugal, that is Mirandês. They have folk and dynamics. They have classes for donkeys. It's not for donkeys to learn, but it's classes for needs and care. Do you want to get a donkey at home? Oh, you need to know how to care a donkey. Donkeys are, in fact, important for therapeutic help for children, for instance. And it's something very interesting festival. And was made and organized by our local association. In contrast, is traditional culture and contemporary art, about activities about paintings, culture, gastronomy, and a free interest, and is also the organizing driver, local association and institutions. Moving to the places. So this is Braga, this is the place nearby Braga, and this is Amares. And if you look where we are having persons, that and these are people from this area. In this case, we have Donkey Festival is here, the place, and you can see that we have much more people involved, even people that are coming from Spain or to the other countries, and we have attendees from all the parts of our country. So, let's to see some things interesting about profiles. They are mostly males. The income for family was about 1,000 until 2050. The age was about 80 to 64, and they are good education level, and we are carefully, the origin of attendees are from Portugal, mostly part. So, speaking and making also interview with the associations. We have here some expression directly from the interview with the person that is in charge about this, and she said that it was very good for the economy, it was very good for the local community because there are lots of incomes, but I have no time, I need to move on. So I'd like to share also the people. I was there, I was one person to make the monetization of this project, and the people, the residents are so proud, they feel value. They feel so important and special. And when I made another communication, I said that in rural areas we have problems because people think, oh, my culture is not good. Why I care about it because it's so negative. So this is effectively the contrary. They felt value, important, special, and in fact was something very, very fantastic. So, some final remarks. So look to all these examples, Amares and Festival of Donkey. You can say that real local stakeholders commonly use these kind of festivals to revitalize local communities and become tourism products. So also these festivals are important for preserving history and culture. Important also for special interest markets that can lead for the meeting of social and economic interest, and also small festivals can contribute to revitalization, local communities, and reach sustainable and environment outputs. Finally, regarding European creative tourism and this project, Create project, we can say that gave some insights, important insights, to better understand this tourism niche, particularly for small cities and rural areas. The Donkey Festival, located in the more deprived and less accessible region, because there is no public transport, attract more national and international tourists. The interaction between participants and the local community has a strong point, and also is strong the partnership for developing festivals in these small areas. Also, organizers reveal that those festivals have significant local positive impacts and should be fair from massification. And finally, the last thing, the more negative thing that they reveal is the support structures to those events that have been pointed out as the main weakness. So they have problems for some structures, they have so much money but they are very happy making this culture be on the map. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Olga. A great comparison and connection to the Creator pilots that are here with us today. Do we have Francois on? Okay, so our last presenter is going to be joining us online from Canada. Oh yes, please. We have Francois Berdard from the University of Quebec at Montreal in Canada. He'll be speaking to us about linking nature and culture in a sustainable tourism development strategy. So Francois, you'll have 15 minutes once we get him on.
So, hello everybody. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Just a minute here. Okay, so tell me if you see my screen. Do you see it? Yes. Okay. So, well, thank you very much. And so the title of my presentation is Linking Nature and Culture in a Sustainable Tourism Development Strategy. My colleague is professor, the main researcher is Benoit Duguay, but he was unable to attend this session, so he asked me to make the presentation, but the research has been conducted also with Daniel Boulard and one of our graduate students, Estelle Cante. So the background, I think it's interesting to mention it. It's Rivière-au-Tonnerre is a very small rural community in Quebec, and they didn't used to have a lot of tourists, but it turned out that the pandemic, since they were not able to travel internationally, they travel domestically. And then so they in 2020 they have received a lot of visitors, but of course they were not ready to receive these amount of local visitors, and also they didn't have a conversation, or tourism was not really part of their strategy. But because of COVID-19, so some local and small destinations, they did actually benefit from that. So they decided to start a conversation, and for them to work with universities to have that conversation in a structured way. So just to see that this small rural destination is in Canada, in the province of Quebec, and more specifically, just north to this island, which is Acosti Island. More here, it's a bigger picture of the map. So it's right here. So it's quite far away from a big center. To go there from the capital city, Quebec City or Montreal, it could take 12 hours to get there. So just to give you an idea of what we have right now in terms of, let's say, attraction. But first of all, I will say that the municipality aimed to become, when they realized that, oh, we have a potential of tourism, so how we are going to develop, what type of attraction that we already have that we could benefit from, or how do we have to get organized. So for instance, okay, so they say, well, we have fishing because we are just on the seashore. So we have crab fishing. It's a traditional industry. We have also deep sea fishing. So it could be of interest for visitors. In terms of natural attraction, they have a 70 kilometers long coastline facing the Anticosti Island, as I mentioned earlier. So this is what they have. They have also natural and sport tourism like fishing, salmon fishing, trout fishing in rivers. So that's something also that they have. And they say, oh, well, we have natural site, fall like this one. So say, okay, so in terms of natural attraction, we do have something that we could use to structure or develop our tourist destination. It was there, but absolutely not organized to host visitors. Also, on the cultural side, they have a church, and this church is the only Norman style churches in North America. Okay, made entirely of wood carved by local craftsmen. So they say, well, maybe we could also use this church as an attraction for our visitors. If we add a look to the inside of that church, it's the problem is that this inside will need to be renovated, but at the present they don't have the funding to do that. But this is what they are planning to do, and maybe if they do develop the tourism industry, they may it could be easier to have some funding from Ministry of Tourism or Cultural to Ministry of Culture to improve the quality of their church. They also have, because in Canada and in Quebec, we have many indigenous nations, and they have it's called Innu, First Nation Innu, and they say, well, also we may use that way of life and to talk about how we could host or propose some experience related to indigenous tourism in our community. So as you can see, this was the very first conversation is what can we do with what we have? And it was the beginning of this research. So the question was, how can a small rural municipality enhance its attractivity through tourism offer based on nature and culture? Because again, they say, well, we have to start with what we have and to package that offering in a way that it's going to be attractive for visitors. So the three main concepts that we have used to develop, it's a qualitative research. So to summarize, nature tourism, ecotourism, cultural tourism, because just to briefly introduce this concept to the community, because for them it's new. So what do we mean by cultural tourism, by ecotourism? So of course, it was not too academic. It has to be simple. But it was important to give them some basic information about these three main concepts. So, for instance, we have used before talking about that, I will like to so the research, the methodology was basically a qualitative research. And we, after introducing the basic concept, we developed a semi-structured questionnaire for interview. And during interview, we have met with 14 people coming from three categories. So one is from people from the administration, the municipality, and also the regional government. Another group was association, active in what we call the North Shore region. and also some business partners like sea excursion, fishing, camping ground, and some travel agencies. And all these interviews was basically registered and then analyzed with what we call the verbatim. We make an analysis of the content based again with the three concepts: nature tourism, culture tourism, and also ecotourism. As I will say, it was important for us to put a little bit more information about a tourist, cultural tourist. What do we mean? What type of tourists we can attract? And so this model was, again, not the model per se, but the definition, just to make sure that we have, I will say, a global understanding of what type of cultural tourists we could attract. So we have used this typology of cultural tourists to, again, put that information and to share that information with the people that we work with. So purposeful cultural tourists, refer to cultural tourism, is a primary motivation for visiting a destination, and the tourist has a very deep and elaborate cultural experience. So that's one type of cultural tourists. Another one is sightseeing cultural tourists. So cultural tourists is a primary reason for visiting a destination, but the experience is less deep and elaborated than the first one. Thirdly, serendipitous cultural tourists. So it's basically a tourist who does not travel for cultural reason, but who, after participating, ends up having a deep cultural tourism experience. The next one, casual tourism tourists. So cultural tourism is a weak motive for travel, and the resulting experience is shallow. And finally, incidental cultural tourists. This tourist does not travel for cultural reason, but nevertheless participate in some activities and has shallow experience. So the preliminary finding is basically based on literature review and based on the conversation that we have with the inhabitants of Rivière-Haute-Tonnerre. They were very interested to know how they do position themselves compared to what they call their competitor cities, which they are in the area. So like, for instance, Bécomo, Sept-Îles, Tadoussac, Havre, Saint-Pierre, and Natashquan. So they were interested to say, how do we position ourselves in terms of nature tourism and culture tourism? And they find out that, and without surprise, because they are new in tourism, that they are low both in culture tourism and nature tourism. But their objective, of course, it's to move in that category and then to be able to eventually compete. So this was the first, I will say, that we were able to present them in terms of perceptual mapping, or how do you position yourself compared to small villages or cities in the area. So now, of course, is how can we improve? So I'm going to summarize basically the summary of what we have learned from the interview. So one abstract of the interview, the following statement: I see for Rivière-Haute-Tonnerre a broad and very varied vision to represent the asset of the city, everything is to be built in Rivière Haute-Tonnerre. There are many natural resources available for adventure tourism or nature, for example, but which are not highlighted. It's just contemplative. So people, there is no activity basically that's proposed. And it will be interesting to expand the offer and also to develop some accommodation for the visitors. Because right now they don't have that. So they basically it's just a place where they visit in a day and then they return to the next the city. So the resources available in Rivière Haute-Tonnerre can promote tourism development through the enhancement of attractions and the creation of an offer focused on nature tourism as expressed by the residents. Many residents express their desire to see the tourism development strategy geared toward ecological values, including sustainability. They are very sensitive to that. And another statement that will give you an example of what they have in mind. The tourist development at Rivière Haute-Tonnerre must be geared toward an ecotourism vision to guarantee respect for the environment and keep the authenticity of natural resources to avoid harming it. Overall, respondents maintain that Rivière Haute-Tonnerre must develop its tourist offer based on existing natural resources such as rivers, lakes, beaches, and forests, and cultural resources such as churches, houses, cloudberries, and their local gastronomy. Again, just to give an example of what do they mean by that, in terms of tourism development, there is an opportunity to present the gourmet aspect of the city with the Cloudberry House, a local product, the Boreal Granary with the pickering of vegetable blueberries. The inhabitants have each their own little garden. That's interesting to mention. And they could participate in markets or even present hunting and fishing activities. So possibilities also are developing interpretation center of their local environment. So we have learned from these interviews that resources in terms of constructed heritage exists, but little promoted. Moreover, the aspect of gastronomy and encountered with the indigenous population of the region are also unknown, intangible cultural reaches. Through the definition of the concept of cultural tourism, we have seen that these practices aim to promote tourism development based on existing cultural resources. So basically, what was key in that research or initiative, it was why this research took place. And it was basically because the pandemic bring local visitors from Quebec to this little remote area, and then say, oh, well, what do we do if we have visitors? So the research was to show at the very early stage of a new rural destination, what type of conversation people they have together, how they react, so they were not dreaming about big things, but they were practical of what we can do with what we have, but we are aware that we have to get this organized to receive visitors. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Francois, and thank you to all the presenters. Can we give them just another round of applause? And I'll invite them to come up here for the question, answer, and debate. We have 15 minutes. We have lots of time to discuss and talk. Francois, can you hear us?
Yes, very well.
Okay, great. All right. First questions. have one in the front? We'll get you on the microphone for those on Zoom.
Regards the festivals, there was one dot in the middle of the ocean. That probably is
Sorry. I didn't-
the map of the festivals. You had one dot in the middle of the ocean, so I hope that's Azores. I can, but I couldn't figure out what was the festival that had more than 10,000 people a day. So if you remember that, we'll talk after. But a question in general. Did you spend time with the people on both of those festivals?
Me?
Yeah, and what was the biggest difference? Because they were both, cultural festivals with small audiences. But what was the biggest difference and feel between those two towns' festivals?
Yes. In fact, the festival at the Mars is something more linked to performing arts, sculpture. There are residências artísticas, artist residents, and they try to involve the people, the community, with some dances, with some workshops about music, but mostly the persons are there for more interesting about arts and performing. The Festival of the Donkey is most close to nature, to cultural and more easy things about, for instance, music and repair old instruments. And all the storytelling about the donkey is something that is very funny. I think the most part of the people were very, what could be very emotional about the people, the situation, and also because donkeys are cute, in fact. But really, the type of persons are completely different. There are more people from Spain, from France in the north than in this festival nearby a city. So, Mars is not a city, but is really a small city with a big transition to raw art. So it's completely different. Yes, completely different.
Another question? Okay, I have a question for all of the presenters. This is a practical conference as well as a research-based and theoretical one. I know we have Terry here from the Creatura Azores and maybe some other local organizations. Based on your research findings, what is some advice that you could give on the practical side to the Creatura organization pilots and others?
Well, I suppose my presentation already included a lot of these practical advice. So the engagement, this was the buzzword of the whole conference, right? So it's nothing really new, but still what it actually means. We talked about emotions, so we can actually design that. I'm not actually advocating that you have to design everything because the local experiences they're inherent, right? But once you have something which you create from the scratch, you even have the tools to design it in terms of including all the senses. So if you include all the senses in the product which you are going to sell, it's highly likely it will end up with emotional engagement by the tourists, by the visitors. We cannot guarantee it like 100%, but the museum types of experiences normally focus only on the visual, maybe oral stimuli. However, of course, you cannot serve food in museums, for example, but what you can be creative about is put the local restaurant, tavern near the museum so that you actually manage the whole destination. It's very hard sometimes with the creative people who we have here who are on their own. So we have a number of experiences, a number of projects which STEM has a very good idea, but then if we don't have the destinations to support it, then you're fighting against, what's the English expression, the giants or something, right? So there have to be different people involved. You have to manage the whole destination, engaging all the senses. So this is definitely number one: co-creation, participation, all the buzzwords we already mentioned today. Yeah.
So, in my case, I worked with 10 different projects because at North Portugal, we have 10 pilots, and the experiences were different, and people always different. But I think sharing is the most important thing. Sharing and be in the middle. Be emotional, be sharing the problems, the partnership, and not be afraid to do different from the norm, because creativity could be different. And this, for me, is the most sensitive thing that I learn as a researcher. And we have so many things to learn with simple people. Okay.
Engagement, sharing, and give all you got. Just give it all you got. And I felt the other way around. Sometimes it is us going there. I felt that it's them pulling us. Because I feel that the people from Trás-os-Montes, when we talk to them, and Olga and Alexandro are involved also in the project, I felt that they really said, finally, somebody came and they want to know and they want to help us. I also come from a rural area. My family has a little production of olive oil, and I feel everything that they are feeling. And that's why this is the main theme of the study. But another thing that I also want to say is that the many projects, and there's all types of projects with all types of budgets. What I feel also for those that are in these projects, what will happen after the project ends? That should start to be the main thing that we should also be talking about in here. What does it happen to a small creative person when the project ends? How will it help him after? Will they have any help with what they are doing, or are just going to be there on their own again? Maybe we should start talking more also about that, but to the creative people, give it all, because if there's just one little thing, there's always hope. Even if one little thing, you work for it, you can always get there. So sharing and engagement, effectively, are two keywords for this.
And Francois?
Well, what I have learned, it's the good cooperation between the community and their willingness to work with university, and I like this. That it's not two worlds that ignore each other, but how we can create synergies with working. Because what I've seen during this conference, it's basically very applied research and working with stakeholders, with people. And then I like to see that type of collaboration between research, universities, and the stakeholders with projects. Could be a very small group, community group, or it could be a city. But really, I like what I see in terms of this osmosis, I should say so, between the university and the community.
Thank you. Any final questions? Great.
Thank you. For Regina, about the olive root, I was curious, how do you involve the visitors or the tourists in the production or in the different stages, different phases of the production? How the olive oil is part of the experience of a tourist in that area? That's my question.
Okay, the olive root that exists at the moment, that was created by the municipality, believe it or not, we cannot find any information how it works. We still have to interview the municipality. We have to get an interview with them to talk us, because there is no. For example, let me compare it with the root of vinhos verdes. We know that each farm, for example, has a timetable. I'm not saying that if it works or not, okay? I'm just comparing with the wine root, vinhos verdes. We know that there's a timetable, the schedule for them to be open. We know that they have a list of activities to do, like visit the vineyard, picking the grapes also, some tasting, some thematic dinners. I don't know if this works, okay, but there is information about this. About the olive root in Trás-os-Montes, there is no information. And as one of the things that we interviewed a president of association there, he said that the words was, "It's dead." It was what he said to me. So I do not know how it works. There was the other idea of create a new one, but that's another idea. But the existent ones, nobody, it says it's terra quente, the roots belongs to the terra quente, but nobody knows how it works. So that's why they feel real abandoned, because they have olive oil, olive trees, they know it has potential, they've created the root, but it doesn't work. Comparing to, for example, what happens in Spain, the roots there, imagine I'm going into the city for tourism. I see an oleoteca, that's what they call the little shops for tasting. I go in, I have flyers, this farm, that I pick the flyer, I choose the farm I want to go to, I get there and I have a list of activities that I can engage and do. In Trás-os-Montes, we have good olive oil, good spaces, good traditions, good cultural heritage, but it's still, they want to do it, but they are still all apart. And maybe with this, we are really excited because we were received by this president there, that he's really want to help us. He wants to help us at the point that he wants us to meet with the union community of olive oils. He's so excited about it. And we really want to do this, go on with the study and see where it goes. Okay. Yes, it is already created, but I don't know what it is. It's not managed. And I would like to know the guidelines also, but I can't even find anything about it.
Anyone else? Okay, well, that brings us to our snack break anyway. It's really come full circle here in the last 3 days, starting with Diane's talk about the head, the heart, and the gut and regenerative tourism, and coming full circle with well-being and the impact of small-scale, particularly rural tourism. So I thank you once again to the presenters. Definitely pick their brain during the coffee break, and thank you so much. Another round of applause, please. The next session's at 4:30 in the black box. Thank you.
What do I do with this?